Make sure everything's like working. You're live. Everyone can see you eating cereal. You're a serial killer. Nice. Yes, we're live. Vita says hello. You don't see yourself? Yeah, a little bit. A little bit. So we can start like right at 11, I guess. I just wanted to make sure like the audio and everything was working. Wait, why? I'm hearing myself. This is weird. Oh, that's why. Right, right. Actually, no. Even now, I'm still hearing like feedback in my microphone is like I can hear like us talking like in the past. I probably goofed something on the settings here. Hold on. See, it's a good thing I started early. Sensei Fox is here. She says she can't hear you. So that's okay, hold on. So hold on a second. Let me try without the headphones. So technology, why do you hate me? Hold on a second.
6 people are watching the stream.
Can they hear you now? Or can you guys hear Jordan now? Without the headphones.
I can hear Sensei Moh.
Sensei Moh. Oh, Sensei Moh, but not Jordan. What? Technology, why do you hate me? Hold on a second. No.
6
What's
people
happening?
are watching. I will.
Can they hear you now? Or can you guys hear Jordan now? Without the headphones. There's still like a lag going on too.
I can hear Sensei Moh.
Oh, now they can hear you. Okay.
Oh, I can hear it. I can hear myself.
But not Jordan. Wait a minute. Technology. Oh, I'm so okay. I had the YouTube link open on my browser as well, so that's why. Okay.
So funny. It's like that, like classic issue where you're like, "Where's the sound coming from?"
One day I'll get my yellow belt in technology.
You would relate it to belts. As a kid, the belt system was so good for me because I needed constant. I needed that like measure of my progress. You know what I mean?
Right.
I need to strive towards. Like I needed discrete goals that I could set for myself. That was very good.
Yeah.
I'm like, why can't real life have a belt system?
All right, we're at 11 o'clock. So I guess we were just going to plan to like share some stories from like when we trained for our black belt and like how it affected us and all that good stuff. Because people always get excited when they hear stories.
Okay. I guess I'll start with how I got into martial arts in the first place. So, my parents had heard about the dojo from some friends of theirs, and they thought it would be very good for my brother because my brother was a very rambunctious child, for lack of a better word. And I remember as they were kind of doing all the paperwork and signing him up, I was watching the class that was going on from the door, the side door there at the dojo. And it was a kind of senior kids class, like a green and purple belt class, and they were using the Mr. Fist suit. So they had like I don't know if it was one of the kids or one of the instructors was in like this full padded suit, and the kids were just like punching and kicking the Mr. Fist suit. I'm like, wow, this is so cool. I need to sign up for this. So like my parents originally weren't intending to sign me up. They were only going to sign my brother up. And then they saw how excited I looked about it and they're like, oh, do you want to try too? And I was like, yes, yes. In the end, my brother ended up like quitting after Orange Advance and I ended up going and getting my black belt. And here I am training like actually almost like over 15 years later. So it was a good decision to bring me to class that day.
Yeah, for sure. That's actually funny because my sister stopped at Orange Advanced as well. And it's funny, like, if you tease her and you're like, so you got to your orange belt, she'd be like, no, Orange Advanced. Advanced is very important. Sensei Fox is asking, how old were you when you started?
I was 11, so I was in grade 6.
Okay, okay. Yeah, because I started when I was around, like, 9 or 10, somewhere around there. I know we trained together as kids, too.
Yeah,
Like, I remember, like, you in class with me and Senpai Sepp in class with me.
I remember Senpai Sepp.
You and Sepp used to get in trouble a lot. I remember that.
Yeah.
We'd be doing like the ray and you guys would start like giggling or something.
We got in trouble a lot for talking. I guess it was Yuri Fedoseev.
Yeah.
Like teaching class a lot at that time, and he was always like kicking me out for talking. Yeah. And then so I guess I took a break for a couple of years once I kind of went away to university and stuff like that. But I came back. So I went away originally to Hamilton,
right,
to master, but then I switched degrees and I ended up moving back home and going to York. So I started training again in fall 2012 as a green advanced belt, which I'd been for like 5 years at that point. Because I hadn't been training on and off. And then I just got really into it, and I remembered what I loved so much about karate as a kid. I remember I used to like, as a kid, I would literally, my mom used to have this rule, like, we can't go to karate until we eat dinner. We have to eat dinner first, and you have to clean up your dishes from the dinner.
Right.
From dinner, you can go. So I would literally be like rushing. I'd be like, quick, eat faster. And I'd be like running around, like cleaning up everybody's plates so I could go. I was so excited to go as a kid.
That's awesome.
Well, I remember like begging my mom like to take me. She used to take me Wednesdays and Saturdays, and I used to be like, please take me on Fridays, please. I want to go to extra classes. I loved it so much. And then I came back in 2012. At that point, I joined the adult class, and I remembered what I loved about it so much.
Yeah. It's funny though, like, do you find that you enjoyed the training more as a kid or more as an adult? Or is it kind of like different and evened out?
It's I think I enjoyed it equally as much, but for different reasons.
Right.
I think as a kid it was I really liked the camaraderie. I liked learning new things. I liked, it was fun to get exercise and get out there. But also I think as a kid I really was motivated by a tangible, measurable goal. So I really like the belt system as a kid. And I know like they add more kind of levels to it in the kids class versus in the adult class because, it makes it kind of easier for you to kind of get to the next level.
Yeah, for sure.
As an adult. But for me, it was like, okay, I need to like learn these techniques and I need to like practice these self-defenses and like practice this kata and then I can get to my next belt. So I really liked that. I was really motivated by that.
For sure.
I was, as I became an adult, it became a little bit less about getting to the next belt. Like that wasn't, I wouldn't say that was my main motivator. Obviously, I really wanted to get my black belt, but and I was very, very excited about grading for black belt.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that more. But yeah, for me, it became more than, I think I cared a lot more about the fitness as an adult and the self-defense aspect than I did as a kid.
Right.
And there was like the friendship element was still there. Some of the people, like you, for example, were still there from when I was a kid. So a lot of the people were new, but like it just felt, it always just, even though it was different people, it always just felt like this home, this community, and I
Yeah.
like really liked being a part of it.
Yeah, and it's actually funny how like our training journeys kind of parallel because like I started around the same age as you, and then I left for university as well, and then I came back, a few years later as well, and again it was the same thing where like as a kid you're doing it because it's fun. You want to go see like your friends at karate, you want to like get to the next belt, you want to pursue that sort of thing, and then when you come back as an adult, like the fitness thing was really motivating. I think as an adult everybody can probably say the same thing, that the conditioning part is a huge reason why they do it, and then the karate is like a bonus. It's like this extra like whipped cream on top of it where you get to like get into shape and then you're learning stuff at the same time. But yeah, it's interesting. So I remember when when you decided you were gonna go for your black belt, and we had just graded for our brown stripe, like I think a few months back.
I think
And
it was. I think we graded in like December
yeah,
of 13, and then in January
we decided. Well, you decided. So like a lot of people don't know like this is like how it came down. Like you were thinking about I guess grading for your black belt, and I had like no intention of grading anytime soon because I was also in school at the same time. And I was at George Brown. I was doing like a 3-year program that was condensed into 1 year. So I'm like, there's no way I'm gonna have time to grade for anything for a while. And you came up to me like before the class started. You're just like, hey, so if I was gonna go for my black belt, like, would you want to trade with me? And I'm like, I don't think I'd be able to commit that amount of time. Like, have you asked anybody else? And you're like, yeah, everybody else said no. But I figure like I'm in school, you're in school, we can kind of help each other out with it. I'm like, I don't know. And you basically
so convincing.
you were so persuasive. You were just like, you know what? Try it out for like 2 weeks. Try training for 2 weeks and just see. Like, if you can't commit to it, then you can always decide not to do it. And I'm like, you know what? That sounds fair. I can always, see what to do. So I remember I went after the class was done. Our sensei came up to me afterwards, and he's just like, "So have you thought about grading for black belt?" I'm like, "This is a funny coincidence because like you just asked me about that." I'm like, "I don't know. I'll see. I'll try it out. See if I can commit the time. If I can't commit the time, I don't want to do it because I want to do it properly." And I went home and I even told my mom. I'm like, "Yeah, so like there's this idea that I should be grading for my black belt. I don't know." And my mom was like, "Well, if you decide to do it, I'll help you however I can. If it means like driving you to the dojo or whatever it was." So she was really supportive of me like during that time there. And sure enough, like 2 weeks after we had done this, we're sitting there, and it's like, so our next candidates for black belt are Jordan Retsinas and Amir Mohammed. And I'm like, oh god, here we go. So, yeah, like if you didn't like push me to do it, I don't know when I would have graded.
I didn't realize I was like such a persuasive force in that you to go for black belt.
But it worked out well actually, because I think like we complemented each other well with the training. Like,
you too.
yeah, and I mean, I always say I always say this like to the kids, like especially when people are sparring and you'll get like a girl sparring that maybe a higher belt, but then she's sparring like a guy that's maybe a little bit bigger, and you can see the guys like coming in with like his ego, and I'm like, be careful, man. Girls are like stronger than boys. And I remember like when we were training for our black belt, like the conditioning part, I was like dying, and like I was trying to catch you, and that was like one of the biggest like motivators for me because like we'd be running stairs, and you'd just be like, yeah, this is great, we're having such a good time, and I'm like dying in the back. I'm like, she's having a good time, so maybe it's not that bad. I'm gonna keep going, keep going, keep going.
I think there's really something to be said about going through that with somebody else, because I think like it like forms a really like strong bond. So I think like we still keep in touch now. It's been almost 6 years since we graded, and we're still like really good friends. And
Yeah.
also just like having someone there, like I remember you and I would be texting late at night about like, oh, this move in this kata, or like this stance, or
Right.
like it just, I think it helps you think about it more when you have someone to like talk things through with. And then there's also someone to push you, so you see like, oh, that other person's still going, I have to push myself more too.
Definitely, yeah.
I think that like there's a lot to be said about, although black belt is, and a lot of things in martial arts are about your individual journey. I think part of what makes it super enjoyable is like just having other people to train with that feel the same way as you do about it. And I think that, like, although it's it's individual, it's still very much a group and like a community
For sure.
effort to me.
Definitely, yeah. Sensei Fox is asking, how did the training change for both of you after black belt, or did it? Do you want to go first?
That's hard. So for me, it changed a little bit because so I left, like I moved away from home like less than around a year after we graded for our black belt.
Right.
So about like just under a year before I actually physically got my black belt. So it definitely changed because when I moved downtown, I was so like happy with what I had achieved in getting my black belt that I really wanted to continue training, but it wasn't feasible for me to keep training at the same dojo.
Right.
I was living too far away and I didn't have a car and et cetera, et cetera. So I tried to find like schools downtown where I could train, but I find that downtown everybody's big on like MMA or like Muay Thai. That's like what's like big down here,
Right.
like contact martial arts. And so I did try a couple classes and I felt that it was just too different of a style. Like even like some of the very fundamentals of like Muay Thai are like so different.
Yeah.
Like come up onto the ball, like the ball of your foot in a kick. And like I can't do this. I've trained like 12 years in this one way. I can't undo all my hard work.
Right.
But like fundamentals, the basics of what I've learned in this style by learning another style. Like I'm still, although I still feel good about what I've accomplished with Goju to this point in time. At that point, this was like back in 2015. I was like, I still feel that I'm too like junior in my study of the art to like start tacking new things on.
Right. Right.
And like completely opposites, what I felt was a completely opposite style. So I quickly like left that and I kept trying to like do my own practicing like in my apartment.
Right.
But it became, I think I did get a little bit out of touch with it for a while just because life like gets in the way
Right.
sometimes. But
Adult life.
I came back to it again. So now I'm training with Sensei Moh at his new dojo in Aurora. And like, yeah, sometimes it's a little bit challenging for me to get there because I live in downtown Toronto, but like I find a way to make it happen because like that's how much it means to me. Like I'll take the train from Union and I'll come up to Aurora, come up on like Saturday mornings. I come, you know what I mean, on Friday nights. I come when I can because I found that it's like sometimes, yeah, like life got in the way for a few years, but ultimately I find it's like such a meaningful part of my life. And like the relationships that I formed are such like meaningful relationships to me that I want to have it in my life.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I think for me, because I found for me, like, after black belt, I took on more of a teaching role. Not that, like, I was teaching, like, we were both teaching when we were training for our black belt, and we started getting into that side of things there. But I found, like, after black belt, that's when I really started to, like, I guess, grow into my own as an instructor and kind of find, like, what works in terms of, like, teaching kids, in terms of teaching adults, like, how things overlap or separate. And I think, like, in doing that, it allowed me to be able to fix myself a little bit better because, like, when you teach kids, you have to, like, no matter how complicated the technique is, you have to break it down to its, like, simplest form. Otherwise, you're just going to confuse them. And a lot of the times, like, the kids are a lot more physically talented than we are as adults. So, like, you'll kind of say something or you'll show it and they'll be able to do it without even really understanding how they're actually doing it. And I found that, like, that level of detail. So now when I look at it, I'm like, okay, the journey up to black belt, like first dan, I say is like your mastery of, like, gross motor skills. So that's like you're going to survive with the self-defense that you know, your fundamentals, your basic katas that you know, and then basically once you go past shodan and you're getting into second dan, third dan, and even higher than that, everything becomes about, okay, well, you can defend yourself using these gross motor skills, but now let's see if we can, like, fine tune with these, like, fine motor skills and then show you how to apply this the same way you had to with the gross motor skills when you went for shodan. So it's really interesting. Like, sometimes, like, because the way that we do our katas now is probably a lot different than the way we did them when we were a brown belt. Everything's a lot, tighter. The movements are a bit more, what's the word? I guess more precise and a bit more efficient in that way. But it's funny because sometimes I'll show like a technique, and especially the younger kids, like they'll just copy what you're doing and they'll be able to do it right away. It's really like I find that really interesting.
I definitely have a different like going back to what we were saying before, like one of the questions was like, how did you think about it, like martial arts when you were a kid versus what it's like training as an adult?
Yeah.
And I probably wouldn't have had the patience for some of the things that we do now,
Right.
as a kid, but it's just like I think it's a function of like maturity, not only as an individual but also like maturity in your training.
For sure.
But having an appreciation for the smaller things, like as a kid you like do the moves and you don't understand necessarily what it is that you're doing or why it works, whereas an adult you're like, no, I want to understand, like what am I doing, why does it work, like how can I make it better.
Right.
Like we'll spend like a whole like now lately these on the Zoom seminars like a whole 30-40 minutes like working on like a couple of moves of a kata, which as a kid I would be like, I just want to get through the whole kata.
Yeah.
So like your relationship changes in that way, and like I think it still means the same thing to me, like it's always going to be important to me, but it's just I have a better appreciation for the art now than I ever did as a kid and even as a brown belt.
Yeah, for sure. I think it almost flips sometimes where like you'll see the kids do a technique and they can do it, but they don't understand why they're doing it or how they're doing it. And then you're an adult and you understand why and how you're supposed to, but you can't make your body actually do the thing it wants to do. Yeah, it's interesting. Okay, so I have a couple questions now. So if you were gonna pick like I always say like to the up and coming brown belts, like you're gonna go through like all of this like crazy training stuff. You're gonna have all these like really exciting moments, these really stressful moments, and you're gonna have like stories like about your training that you can pass on to the next generation of people coming up that maybe want to pursue a black belt. So like what would be like your story that you would tell? Like the next brown belt that wants to go for their black belt. Like what would be the story that you would share with them?
About like why you should go for your black belt?
Or even just like a moment in the training that like sticks with you even to this day. Like a glory story almost.
The story that sticks with me really is like during our training when we were doing the circle of self-defense.
Okay, yeah.
And somebody punched me in the face because I guess like I was breaking out of one technique and then I turned around and I wasn't ready and I got smacked in the face. And honestly, I remember both our sensei and me screaming at the same time. Like he screamed, "She's fine," and I screamed, "I'm fine," because I think the person was like so taken aback that they punched me in the face that they were like, "Are you okay?" And I was just like so focused on what I was there to do because we had spent the last like 5 months just like putting our absolute heart and soul into being there that day. And I just like, to me, I couldn't think of anything else. And like, yeah, later, like my lips swelled up and like it hurt. But I was like, in that moment, I didn't even feel it because I was so focused on like what I wanted on that goal that I wanted to achieve that I had worked towards for that many months.
Yeah.
That what I thought about that after the fact, and that was actually really meaningful to me because something that I struggled with a lot in my training and actually in my life is I'm very easily distracted by things. Like mental journey of like so like let's be candid in this conversation. Like I was diagnosed with ADHD actually around the time that I first started training.
Okay.
Like a thing that I've always struggled with and that I think martial arts was really good is like helping me with that focus. And although I've improved a lot, it's still something that I'm actively working on like on a daily basis. And so like going through training, like people would do things like spray me with water bottles in my face, like help me like to stay focused on the kata, like not get distracted, not lose your place in the kata and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And me thinking back on that incident where I got punched in the face and I didn't let that distract me at all, I was like, this is just such a testament to like how far I've come in my training, not only just like within black belt training, but just like in my journey as a martial artist as a whole.
Right.
Like, I was able to overcome that distraction and just push forward towards my goal. And that's still something that I like strive to recreate in my training constantly.
Hopefully not by going up to people like punch me in the face and see if I get distracted.
Punch me in the face and see if I can get this. I stay focused on what I'm doing. I think that was a good, to me that was like the best like representation of, because the physical aspect of it is a lot more obvious.
Right.
In the physical journey, like yes, I can run stairs with like weights on my back for like 45 minutes and like not even break a sweat. Like yeah, you can see the physical, but like the mental is harder to see. And that to me was like, wow, this is like this mental goal that I've been working my whole life to achieve. And like in that moment I proved to myself that like I had made that progress.
Right. That's a cool story. It's actually funny because like I noticed like during our training you were always like really good with the physical part of things, and then I struggle with the physical part. The story I would always tell is when we did the drill. Do you remember the drill?
I like that. That's why if I had to tell a second story, that's what I would tell.
Oh man, that thing, like to this day, that drill is like, I actually remember the first time I saw that drill was my first class in the black belt class, and this was when we had like a really full black belt body of students back then, and I remember like going into the class, and there's maybe like 20 people in the class, and then there's me with my brown belt, and like in most of the other classes, I was standing towards like the top of the line, and I go into this class, I'm like way down at the bottom end. I'm like, okay, this is kind of nice. I like this. And it was when Senpai Kirill and Senpai Toyin were going for their black belts. They were getting ready to train for their black belts, and they did the drill with the two of them. And I remember like we did the two lines. We set the bag out. They did the rolling and the. So if people don't know what the drill is, basically you have the person doing the drill in the center. You have two lines. So one line is facing them, one line is behind them, and sometimes there's a heavy bag in front, sometimes there isn't. And the idea is the line that's behind you, the person pushes you, you do a front roll, you stand up, the person in front of you attacks you from the front. You have to break away, then they push you backwards, you do a back roll, the person from behind attacks you from behind. And then they go to the back of the line, and the next person, so you're always getting someone who's fresh and not tired. And you're just rolling and like self-defense. And I don't do well with like heights. I don't do well with like roller coasters or anything like that. So motion sickness was not good for me. And at one point, I just remember like Senpai V and Senpai Toin were doing this drill, and I'm sitting there, I'm just like, wow, that's crazy. And then after the class, I remember like some of the black belts were like, so you want to do that one day? And I'm just like, I don't think I would ever be able to do that. Like, no matter how hard I train, I don't think I'd ever be able to do that. And I'm assuming word must have gotten around because sure enough, you know, a few weeks before our grading, we did the drill. And I remember like we were going for about 3 minutes. Like you were in one line, like on one side of the dojo, I was in another line, and we just kind of looked at each other like, okay, see you on the other side, basically. Good luck. And we're doing this drill for about maybe 2 or 3 minutes. And I remember at like one point, like the room was like spinning. The ceiling looked like it was on like the, and you know, I was joking. I was like, our sensei looked like he had hair. The kids always laugh when I say that. And I remember like on the floor, and I'm feeling like nauseous now because I'm so dizzy. And Senpai Young was in my line, and he's like poking me. He's like, "Come on, get up! You can do it! You can do it!" And everyone's like encouraging me, like, "Get up, get up!" And so I stood up and I kept going. And then finally, like my stomach had enough, and I like ran to the bathroom. And it was funny. I'm in the sink. I have the water running. I'm like washing my face off, and I threw up a little bit. And they sent Senpai V out to check on me. And he knocks on the door. He's like, "Hey man, are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'll be out in a couple minutes." It's like he like look. I could see in the corner of my. He looks into the dojo. He leaves. He's like, "Yeah, you better come back. You better not quit. Come on, let's go." And he's like pushing me. And obviously he used more colorful language than that I'm not going to say online here. And you know, I finished up. I came out of the bathroom, and he's like, "Okay, come on, you can do it." And I went back in, and the black belts, you know, they looked at me and they're just like, "So do you want to stop or do you want to continue?" And I looked over at you, and you had no idea that I'd even left.
I had no idea.
You had no idea. After the class was done, you're like, "Wait, you left?" And you were going that whole time that I was gone. I'm like, I can't let her do this by herself. I got to go back in there. And you know, we finished the drill finally, and we're both like, we're walking like drunk people because we're so dizzy after all the rolling. And of course, you know, on the tee, you're gonna do all your katas now. We just kind of looked at each other, and I remember that moment because like we were both so done, and we just looked at each other and we just started laughing because we're like, "Yeah, this is it. Let's." And we just like went off with the katas. And I don't know how well the katas looked, but
I don't remember. It was such a blur. Honestly, I don't know how I made it through because I'm also pretty like I have like a low tolerance for like
Yeah.
nausea, I guess. So I like literally my head was just like I barely remember that. I just remember rolling and rolling and
Yeah. Oh
rolling.
my gosh. That
I
was a
was
vicious drill. That was a
oh
vicious drill. So yeah, that's probably one of my favorite stories.
back on that. Like you've since told me that about it, but yeah, I honestly had no idea because I was so like in my own little world because the rolling was just so much.
Yeah, man.
It felt good after, like at the end of it, you're like, yeah, like I did this and like I survived. And
Yeah. And I think that's like important when you're going for something like a black belt. Like, I don't know, like in today's day and age, I know like Taekwondo and karate and a lot of these like more traditional martial arts, they get a lot of like smack talk because they're like, oh, you guys are just like belt factories or whatever. And it's like, well, I don't know if other dojos do this the same way that we do, where you pick a period of time before your actual grading and it's just like mayhem and chaos in your training. And that time is dedicated to the brown belts going for black. Like, I think when you go about it that way, it makes the belt mean that much more. Senpai Young says, I was knocked out during that drill. Sensei D2 picked me up, slapped me in the face, and pushed me back over the bag.
that sounds about right.
Oh,
That's
man.
like something Sensei do.
But that's one of the cool things too, is like every like generation of black belt has like their stories. And like I remember like I think one of the biggest changes I noticed after we went for our black belt is like as like people got busy and like things kind of changed a little bit, like there wasn't as many eyes on the brown belts as much as there was when we were like, I remember when we were going, like every day there was like one or if not two black belts giving us like something. And like if
Yeah.
you missed a day and like I was there, I'd be like, oh no, Senpai Young told me to do this. This is how we're supposed to do it. Or Senpai V told me to do this, or Sensei D told me to do this, or Sensei D2 told me to do this. Or like if you were there one day and you're just like, no, like someone else said to do it this way, and like we trying to figure out like all these different like pieces of information. So I find like, I don't know,
I
for
got it.
me it's that was like one of the coolest things. It's like we get to be kind of like the culmination of all these other people just like throwing information at us, and it's just like really cool.
I agree. It felt really good to like have the other black belts invest in our training. It felt really this is what I mean, like this is what I meant when I said earlier that it's like really feels like you're part of a family.
Yeah.
Because, like basically all you had like all these like I'll call them generations of black belts that came before you who were there to make you into one of them.
Right.
So like you like obviously it was your own journey and like you needed to put in the work, but like without them you wouldn't have been able to get there because they were your teachers to help you get to that point.
Yeah.
Like I that was like something that meant so much to me throughout training was to have that. Like I look back fondly of like this time that like we were doing the warm up and I had my back to the door and Sensei D just like came in behind, like choked me and like threw me down to the ground. And everybody like stopped and looked and he was like, "What are you doing? Continue the warm up." I look back fondly on like or like that time I was sitting on the table in the front and
Oh my
Sensei
gosh.
behind me and choked me. Like I think or like I definitely got jumped in the girls' change room like a bunch of times.
Yeah.
So like
And
I
like
look fondly on those
it's
things.
so funny because like someone who doesn't train or like has no context of this stuff, they're gonna hear this and they're like freak out. Like they're just like, that sounds horrible. Why would you do this to yourself? And I guess like it kind of is a little bit insane, but like
In a good
it's a
way.
journey to. It's not like you just like they just take you and like throw you into this like chaos here. Like it's like a you've basically learned all these skills up until like brown belt. When you go for your brown stripe, it's almost like, okay, well, this is like an informal test of what you know so far. And then it's like, okay, well, now let's see if like you can maintain the same quality of technique that you're supposed to have when like the odds are against you. And I think like that's a huge component of like self-defense, because I remember like any type of adversity that could be thrown at us was thrown at us. Like we'd be in a kids class and they'd put like all of the kids in one side of the room for dodgeball and then just like the two of us on one side. And even the kids are just like, whoa, this is gonna be like really easy. And we're just like, wait, what happens if we get hit with a ball? And they're just like, oh yeah, you're gonna do like 20 push-ups if you get hit with
Yeah.
a ball. And I remember like one of the kids one time was just like, that seems a little unfair. And I forget who was running the game or whatever, and they're just like, well, life is not fair, and that's what we're trying to teach the brown belts. is like, what are you gonna do when life is unfair? Are you gonna like whine and complain about it, or are you gonna try to find a way to make a solution or do the best you can with this circumstance that you're given? So that was a rough game. Like rough games of dodgeball were played.
Well, I remember this one time where we were on like our third kids class of the night.
Yeah.
And like just absolutely beating us up. And it was like, oh yeah, we're running laps, 10 laps forward, 10 laps backwards. And like if you don't finish first, you have to do it again.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember that was also a pretty common.
Yeah.
Or like we would do laps, then we'd have to go like all of our katas A to Z with like 25 of an exercise in between.
Yeah.
That's the common one.
Yeah. I mean, like we were like everyone, all the black belts will say like we were in the best shape possible when we were.
I tried to get back to that.
Yeah, and I think like we like I think that's one thing that I'm gonna try to achieve with like the new generation of black belts coming up, and even with like the ones that we have now, is to try to push us back to that level of fitness, because even now, like I mentioned this in like I guess the first two podcasts that we did, is that like as I'm working on like my physical conditioning, like certain techniques and certain like things in certain katas are becoming so much easier to actually do, just because my body is now equipped with like the speed or the flexibility or the strength to be able to do it. So yeah, I mean the physical part is like a huge component.
Agree. The physical aspect can like really hold you back if you don't. I appreciate now that my fitness level is kind of diminished a lot more about the benefits of being in such good physical condition and why they pushed us to do things like laps or to do stairs or to do like 25 of an exercise between all our katas, because when you are at that level of fitness, then all your mind is focusing on is the technique. You don't get tired. Like obviously, like yes, you put 100% into your kata, you're tired, but like you're able to get back to your, like you get your breath back and you're
ready to go again.
Another kata within, like you take a few deep breaths and you're ready, and then that really just allows you to hone in on the technique and like what you're actually trying to do with the kata, as opposed to thinking about, oh god, I'm so tired, or like, oh, I can't catch my breath.
Right.
So I fully appreciate the thought process on how the training was done.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. Yeah.
I miss it. I would go through black belt training again.
Yeah, would you really? Sometimes I look back and I wonder, like, how did I do this?
Well, it's because like, so we talked a lot about like what happened in the dojo, but like outside of the dojo, like what was going on in our lives. I remember like you were getting up at like 5 o'clock every morning to go downtown to George Brown, and like I was like going to school full time, and I was also working for my parents because my parents have an accounting practice, and that was so like February to April, May is like their busiest time because it's like when personal taxes are due and corporate taxes. So I was like helping them as well.
Right.
So I was going there and like working late with them sometimes too. And like I got like 4.0 GPA that semester. Like it's just like there's so much more than just like you're still living your life and you still have responsibilities, and like making that training happen. I think it was like we didn't compromise our training despite the fact that we had like we were still there like 4, 5, 6 days a week, like training several hours a day each time. Like we didn't compromise that despite the fact that we had other responsibilities.
And I think that's something that a lot of people like since then have struggled with, because like when you hear like the stories of like the people that trained us, for example, so like Sensei Fox, Sensei D, Sensei D2, Senpai Young, Senpai V, Senpai 20, like all like Senpai Sasha, Senpai Sep, all these people that like trained us for our black belt, like they embodied the same thing where it's like, yeah, you have no idea what's going on in my personal life right now. You have no idea how busy my family life is or my work life or my social life, whatever it happens to be. But like here I am, and I'm coming to class with a big smile on my face, even though I may have had like the worst possible day ever, but I'm here to train to make this goal happen that I want to do. And it's something that I notice like nowadays it's harder for people to balance both sides of that coin, where it's like you can be committed to something and set aside like 1 or 2 hours every day for you to achieve a goal that means a lot to you, and then still have all the other chaos in your life that's going on at the same time, right? It's just a matter, like Sensei D always says, it's a matter of how badly you want it. And I think that like for us the main driving force was our desire to like I guess like for both of us to a certain extent, it's a desire to prove to ourselves that we were able to do it, even
Yeah, I
despite
agree.
everything that was going on. Because I mean, like yeah, you were right. I was up like 5 o'clock every morning to bus it down to George Brown downtown, and it was actually funny. I had one professor. He's a taekwondo. He was a taekwondo instructor,
Oh, I remember
and
this.
he was such a cool guy. I was in his class, whatever, and I'm like doing my homework while he's doing the lecture, because like I had read the stuff, like I was on top of my homework, like I've never been in my life. Like my high school teacher was like, "Who is this like person here? It's not the same guy." And he's like, "Why are you doing your homework like now?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm not gonna have a lot of time to do it later tonight or tomorrow night or any other night for that matter." And he's like, "Why?" And I'm like, "I told him I'm training for my black belt." And he's like, "Okay, okay." And he's like, "So like, what do you mean like you're training for your black?" I said, "Well, we do like 3 to 6 months of like intense training leading up to the grading, and like that just happens to fall like right now." And he's like, "Okay." And he's like, "So what do you do?" And I told him, I do karate, and he's like familiar with like different martial arts, right? And he's like, "What style of karate do you do?" And I'm like, "Goju." And he's like, "Oh my god." And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Goju is already like one of the toughest like forms of karate with all the like conditioning that you have to do and the biomechanics." And he knew full on like this was like a demanding grading. And he's like, "So they make it more intense when you go for your black belt?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Okay." He's like, "Well, I mean, if I'm your last class of the day and you need to duck out a few minutes early to catch your bus, like that's totally fine." So he let me like leave his class like 20 minutes early, and then he like emailed me the rest of the notes. And I'd get on the subway, I'd make it to Richmond Hill, I'd get on the bus, I'd look at the clock, and being on time was huge for us. Like if we were late for a class, like all hell would break loose. Push-ups, burpees, like you name it. And I look at the clock and it's like, oh my gosh, it's like 4:20 in the afternoon. I have 10 minutes to make like an 11-minute walk from like Young and Crosby, and I'm like, I can run it, and I've got like all these textbooks in my bag, and I'm like hauling ass, making it to the dojo. And I look at the time, it's like 4:26. I'm like, perfect. I have 4 minutes, like get a sip of water, change into my gi, and then I come back out. I'm like, okay, now I can catch my breath. And then sure enough, like whether it was like Sasha or Carol or like Sensei D, would be like, okay, why don't you start by running some stairs?
Why did you running?
Yeah, it's like, why don't you start from running some stairs? I'm like, I just ran like 7 minutes with like backpack with textbooks. I'm like, okay, here we go. So
When I remember too, like, so I would like sometimes I wouldn't make it all the time for like the 4:30 class because sometimes I had lecture at that time.
yeah,
So I would like I remember I would like finish my class and sometimes I would park right at York and sometimes I would park at the Promenade Mall.
right.
So I would bus from the Promenade Mall to York. So I remember I would like literally like the bus would get to the parking lot at Promenade. I would like book it to my car and like run. I'd like stop at McDonald's and grab like one or two like of those little like the value pick sandwiches and I would literally eat them in like it took me like maybe about 8 minutes to drive from that McDonald's to the dojo. And like before I got to the dojo, while driving, I'd like eaten both of my hamburgers. The only time like food and I was like there ready, like quickly change into my gi, like and immediately just start training. Like I don't know how I did that, honestly. I don't know how I didn't like throw up in class
For
because I
real,
was
I know.
literally shoveling hamburgers into my mouth like right before I got there. And immediately, like you said, it was like, yeah, okay, start running.
Somebody Young's like the great thing about that training is how applicable the principles transfer to your regular outside dojo life. That's really true.
I
That's
agree.
really true. I feel like a lot of the people that I know that have gone for black belt, they develop a lot more patience because like you can't have an over the top reaction to any little inconvenience that happens to you. Like you learn really quickly to keep your composure and like find a way to keep going. That's one of the biggest lessons I looked at. Like, and you could see it too when people like after we graded for our black belts and like the next wave came up. Like I noticed like young people, like not to be anything, but like a lot of young people, they have that like hothead mentality kind of thing where they're like they have so much energy, but it's like how do you like contain it in such a way where you can now make it a little bit more productive. And just like the evolution of people, like when they go through this, it's really cool.
Yeah, I agree. I think channeling your energy in a good way is something that was really important for me
Yeah.
to like channel your energy in a productive way. And I think that was something that I saw translate into my life, like during the grading and then, like, sorry, during the prep for the grading and then following
Yeah,
our actual grading.
for sure. we got to get you ready for knee dance soon.
Really, like I really am looking forward to it, and I think I've been pretty good about. I think I set this goal for myself, and I was coming and training at least once a week at the dojo, and then this pandemic happened. But we've been doing the video classes for the past I want actually about a month now, a little more than a month.
Yeah.
Been coming at least 2 times a week, so I'm feeling really good about it.
That's good. That's good.
I'm hoping. I guess my goal is to keep improving my physical conditioning,
Right.
and then I have that on that I can be working on my own, and then with the video we're working on improving technique. Like I said, sometimes we'll spend a whole 30 or 40-minute call just working on one or two moves.
Yeah.
One or two techniques or one or two moves in a kata or something. So I think we're really now focusing, now that we have a little bit less space to work with, and maybe we don't all have the same kind of tools in our apartments or our homes. We don't have a bob that we can put up or in a heavy bag or something like that. So we kind of making do.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think what we realize that we can do is really focus on our technique.
Yeah.
And making doing things correctly and really breaking things down. So I think we're positioning ourselves really well to ramp up.
Yeah.
Once we get back into the dojo.
For sure. Everybody get their cardio because man, that's what we're gonna hit first. That's the first thing that's probably gone with a lot of people is the cardio.
Yeah.
So hopefully within the next, few months or weeks, hopefully, I don't know when it's gonna happen, but bring your running shoes, people. We're gonna be outside. We're gonna do some cardio and get ourselves back into tip-top shape. So I hope we've got
nice by the time
we've got a couple minutes left. So we'll wrap it up in a bit here. If there's any other questions anybody has for me or Jordan, you can type them in the chat now. And then again, if you want to make a donation, you could just do it through the same dojo's email. And then I'll stick around for a couple minutes if anyone wants to call in their donations either. So thank you for that. That's awesome. It's really helpful. You guys have no idea how helpful it is. So it's good.
Thanks, everyone.
Awesome.
Appreciate the questions and appreciate you tuning in.
Yes.
To talk about our black belt experience.
The torment we went through.
About it. I like when people listen.
Yeah, no, and it's one of those things too. Everybody has stories to share. So if any of the other black belts want to come on and give their insight onto what it was when they trained for black belt, I know people who are aspiring to one day go for black belt, they love these stories, right? And it's funny because even now, a lot of the students, the children that were around when we were training for our black belt, that are still training now with me here, and they're in their teens now, and it's really weird. They're little tiny adults almost, and some of them are getting up there blue belt, brown belt, and I'm pushing them into some of the drills gently that we used to do, obviously a little bit more watered down because they're still kids and they're not going for their black belt yet, and they'll do some of these drills and they're just man, I remember being 8 years old and watching you and Miss Retsinas doing this, how did you guys do this? And I'm well, gradually you build up to it. And so it's kind of cool to see the next generation is always excited to see what the generation before did. And I guess it's the same thing with us. We always look back at the Sensei D's and Senpai Young and Sensei Fox. It's oh yeah, you guys are the coolest people ever. So yeah. Where can I purchase the shirt? My Kama Chameleon shirt. It's a punny shirt. So it's chameleons holding Kama. I have them here at the dojo.
Where can I purchase the shirt you are wearing?
That's my sister.
He made them himself. He's the pun master. Throughout our training, actually, the thing that I one of the things I really look forward to was you always cracking puns.
Yes.
Basically every class you had a new pun. I was how does he come up with these so authentically? It just happens.
Yeah, it's a gift and a curse. I've been making this joke for probably 6 years. I'm now it's on a shirt, so. Awesome. All right, well, enjoy the sunshine. Stay safe, everybody. And I guess we'll see you in another 2 weeks. We'll do another podcast.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. See you, Jordan.
Yeah.